Yo no sé si te importa a ti, yo me siento bien desde que nací.
Bien, 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 bien. El tiempo rodeado de cubanos.
Imagínate, man.
3, 2, 1. We're in Paul&Tonic with Mr. Rainer Krenstetter for the second time. How are you, Rainer?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. I think it's interesting for us to tell our audience that this is our second interview attempt. After yesterday's attempt, we forgot to record. I'm sorry, I forgot to record the interview. So we're going to do it again.
Exactly.
It was very good yesterday.
I also really enjoyed, so
Yeah, so
I'm happy to do it again.
I hope it's as good or better today.
I hope so too, yes.
For the people that maybe don't know, there's not many people that don't know Mr. Rainer Krenstetter. He is one of the big stars of ballet today. He has had an amazing career, which has taken him from London to Vienna to Berlin, and then to Miami, to the Miami City Ballet, where he's ending his career at this moment. Other than that, he has had multiple engagements with other opera houses, galas, festivals, and performances all around the world. And he is also artistic director in Tokyo today. And he will tell us a bit more about this new endeavor he has. Rainer, it's great, and I'm happy to have you with us again.
Thank you.
I just mentioned that you are in the process of ending your career. As I understand, you're beginning or have began a few weeks ago with the farewell performances in Florida, and next week you have your last two shows, I think. How are you facing this, Rainer? First, in a professional way, and then second, more in an emotional manner. How does a dancer face his last performances?
Well, you know, it's maybe that's also interesting for the people to know who don't know the Miami City Ballet. We are performing, we have 3 main theaters. So we perform in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. So that's why I already had 2 big goodbyes in Miami and in West Palm Beach, and now the Fort Lauderdale weekend is coming. And actually it's kind of nice because somehow it's like I have, you know, usually it's like 1 goodbye and that's it, and now I have like 3 goodbyes basically. So it's kind of nice. I mean, we are not doing the big things in the other 2 theaters now. The big thing will be happening when it's really the last one. Yes, I'm ready. I prepared for this moment. You know, I always had it in the back of my mind. I think it's very important that ballet dancers have that always in the back in their mind, because it's just the ballet profession as an active dancer is just not possible to do until you know, retire with 68, 65, whatever you do. So so I always had it in the back of my mind, and I've seen it with my parents, who were both ballet dancers with the Vienna State Opera Ballet. So I know it's gonna happen, and so I prepared for that. It was always important to me that I'm not gonna wait too long to do it. And I've seen it too often that ballet dancers just hold on 1, 2, 3 years just too long onto it, and I always was like, I don't want that's the case, and I also didn't want that my body says I can't anymore, or an injury, you know. That's unfortunate. Of course, that's something you can't plan, so I was very lucky that it's not my body making the decision for me. And last but not least, I didn't want that the director comes to me, the artistic director, saying like, well, you know, maybe it's time. So basically saying like, it's time to leave. It's time to go. It's not anymore on the level of a principal dancer. The right time.
That's a question that I had while you were, you know, giving your answer. Why do you think some dancers take so long to retire? What calls them? Is it stage? Is it the audience? Is it the lifestyle? What attracts you not to leave? We have many, many examples, and one of them, Nureyev, for example. Why didn't he get off stage at the right time? What attracts you to this?
I think that it has something to do that usually us dancers, we start very young, like when we're 6 years old, you know, that kind of age.
Hmm.
And somehow doing the ballet education, I did the Vaganova style, the Vaganova method. So it's based on 8 years. So basically, while you do your academic school, you also already do the ballet school on the side. So there's not much time to develop anything else, maybe what other teenagers, you know, look around and explore, you know. Even it was always school and ballet school. It was not
Right.
very often that you even could go with your friends to the cinema or to a swimming pool or
Skiing.
something. Yeah, skiing. And then you finish your academic school and the ballet school, and then in the best case you immediately get a contract. So where other people go to university, for example, and then maybe they do 1 year, they do this, and then they're like, oh, it's not really my thing, and then they do like another direction. So, you know, those beginning 20s, like between 80 and 18 and 22, maybe other people have more exploring and trying different things, and us, we make this career, and then at the end, if you don't prepare early, that's the only thing, you know. I always have the
Right.
feeling sometimes dancers, I don't want to say that the cliche is right, but it's really in many cases right, that it's only ballet, and you try to take everything in as much as possible because your career is so short, and you forget that there is an after. And what other options do you have? Do you put money aside to save? Where can you go? What can you do at the same time while you have your career? Can you maybe do now? I think things change because everything is possible online. So people do,
Right.
at least in the US, online classes with school in the evening. But you know, I do think it's just the lack of other options while you have your career.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But in a case like Nureyev, for example, he didn't need anything. You know, he was financially set, very well set. He didn't need to dance. Why did he continue?
Well, of course,
Is the stage an addiction? Maybe, do you think?
yes. I mean, that's theater life, and that's also something what I'm gonna, I think, miss the most is, you know, entering stage door and going into theater and leaving after the performance again through the stage door. It's a different world. It's a beautiful world, and it's just very special. And you don't want to give up the special, great things. You never want to give up the good things, right? So,
Exactly.
and the backstage and the makeup and putting a costume on and changing into a character, into a role, and it's just beautiful. I do think that especially successful dancers, I mean, Nureyev is, you know, one of the most successful dancer ever, but even like normal principal dancers in a company, also maybe also called a ballet, but maybe principals even more, you know, you get celebrated every performance. You have your bows and you get your flowers and you have 1,000 people applauding and the signatures afterwards at the stage door. So it's also something which makes you probably feel very special and feel very, you don't want to give that up probably. And
Yeah, somehow I think you hit it right on the nail. It's the theater life which you miss. You know,
yeah,
it's being the possibility of being many characters during, you know,
yeah,
one day. You know,
yeah,
in a day you can maybe be 2-3 different characters, and during your life hundreds of
yeah,
characters, and then of course the appreciation of the audience, the applause. So it's also, I think, an ego thing, which is very, very important for
exactly.
dancers. Yeah.
Exactly. Wondering why not more. And I mean, I was thinking maybe if that would have been when I prepared for that, if that would have been what could you do similar to it? Like, why don't we become actors? Because
Right.
ballet is not just periods and jumps, right? Or pas de deux, like dancing. Ballet is also
It should not
acting.
be. It should not be.
Exactly, and it's a lot of acting actually. So why don't do many dancers try to go into acting, like theater acting? Because
That's
then
a
you
good
have the
question.
same thing. You hardly hear it. Some, of course, you know, are in one Hollywood movie or something. You know, Baryshnikov, you know, sometimes appears, or other dancers as well. But in general, it's kind of interesting why we either stay in the ballet world, becoming a teacher, a choreographer, or we do something else. But why don't we stay in the theater world, just in a different art form? I don't know.
That's a very good question, Rainer. There are not many examples out there. Maybe Baryshnikov is the closest of the performers, dancers who continues his life being a performer. At the moment, he's doing theater. I don't know if you know this, but he's doing complete theater, and
Mm-hmm.
he's devoted his life now to acting. Under the same topic, you became this successful dancer. Of course, you come from a family of dancers, so your road was more or less defined. Um, what was the relationship between your father, your mother, and you? Did they force you to become a dancer? Did they influence you in any way? How did this relationship work?
First of all, maybe it's good to know I've never worked with my parents, so
Mhm.
not as a student and not as a professional dancer. I've never rehearsed with them, or that they would teach me a class or something. I've never done that. Well, to be honest, I also have a brother, and he did not go into the ballet direction. He went into the music. He studied music, flute, and actually now he's a journalist, so for opera, concert, and ballet for the big national newspaper in Austria. So also kind of art. I don't know if you grew up into a art family. That's where you. I don't know. I was starting with age 6 when there was no nanny. You know, my parents would bring me to the opera house, and sometimes I would be in the dressing room with my father waiting, and sometimes I would be waiting in the dressing room with my mother. So with such an early age, I would already smell this theater world, and I saw that, and the canteen, and how the people talk, and the backstage, and like I say, putting makeup on and changing a costume, and it was fascinating to me. And I always say, because I saw it with ballet, that's why I was like, okay, I need to dance to be able to get into this world. I don't know, if my parents would have been singers, maybe I would have said, okay, I need to start singing to be able
Right.
to get into this world. And yeah, I fell in love. Until today, I fall in love with transforming into someone else.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
never fell in love with the gymnastic part, I call it, the technical circus things in ballet, you know, which becomes now at competitions or at galas, who turns the most pirouette and who kicks the leg higher. That was never my interest. It was always, I loved being once the bluebird and once the firebird and once the Lenski and once the prince and once the peasant and once, I don't know, like this. And so my parents were, you know, supporting it, but on the other side they were also saying, you know, it's very, very hard, and it's a very tough, and you know, the discipline, and it wasn't always easy, especially when I was a student, when we did some ballet performances with the school, you know, in some theater, or even the opera house at the end of the school year, and all the other kids would come out of stage door, and the parents would have their flowers and say, oh, my beautiful ballerina, you were amazing. And I was like, came out and were like, well, this wasn't good, this could have been
Yeah.
better. And you know,
Corrections.
it's corrections and talking, and the good but also the bad, because
Yeah.
or then even Vladimir, when he came, Malakov, when he came to do some ballets with Vienna, you know, and they cast me in solo, and Vladimir even in a principal part when I was 18. It was always like, it's because of your parents, or it's because of the connect, you
Really?
know. It, yeah, I mean, other dances, you know, that's the easiest. You always try to find somewhere else the excuse, and it's, I know now it's jealousy, but you know, when
Yeah.
you're 18 and you're new and
It's
you're, and
difficult
you,
to
it's
accept.
terrible.
you decided to become a dancer at a very young age, of course. If it hadn't been dance, what would have you done? What other interests did you maybe have as a teenager, as a kid?
Well, a big interest was skiing.
Yeah.
Being Austrian, of course, I started to ski very early, and it was very important for my parents also that I become a normal guy, you know. And so, yes, careful, but still, we would go skiing. They somehow, even in ballet school, they were fine. I don't know. It's like swimming here in Florida in the ocean. It's
Yeah.
so normal. So um that was definitely a big interest as well. No, but somehow as a dancer, going every day passing this opera house to go to the ballet school, my dream was like, okay, I want to dance there. And then being backstage when my parents were still dancers, so that was the goal. And actually it changed when I won the Prix de Lausanne, and from 1 second to the next second, which I never thought. I remember going to Switzerland thinking, hopefully I'm passing the first round, but I've never would have imagined to win it.
Right.
And so from 1 second to the next, something and someone decided that I'm gonna leave. So, and that's when I went to London to the Royal Ballet School. So it just happened. I never thought about what would be another option. And then
Right.
I faced myself in London getting offered by Sir Anthony Dow at that time still a contract, and Renate Zanella from Vienna, and suddenly I was sitting there with 2 contracts. So I never auditioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then okay, I made a decision to the contract, and then I just danced. And then the same thing when Vladimir Malakhov asked me to join the Staatsballett Berlin when he became the director at that time, still Staatsoper unter den Linden. And again, so it has never been that I was this person like, okay, where do I audition? In which company do I want to go? Then you go there, you don't get the job. And then at one point you ask, well, what else could I do? Or like, for me, it was just always, but nevertheless, what was always in my mind, and it's kind of funny, everyone thinks, why? But I did sometimes think, what if I would injure now? And what if this would be over and I can't continue? What would you do? And I always say, till today, I would have always loved to become a flight attendant.
Oh, really?
I don't know
Really?
why. They're like, what? But that's like being a waiter.
You leave home very early after winning Lausanne, and you move to London. How old were you? Were you?
17.
How did this affect your life? A 17-year-old kid leaving home and to London of all places, you know?
Well, it affected a lot just because, I mean, the Royal Ballet School taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would say especially my port de bras, which is probably the strongest thing in my dancing, my port de
Mm-hmm.
bras, and pas de deux. I learned a lot of pas de deux and very good pas de deux teaching.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to, after having seen for many years the Vienna company, it was just great to be for a year seeing the Royal Ballet and going to
Right.
their performances. So it was very inspiring. I would already, understudy some kind of waltzes and stuff called the ballet parts of the company, where I would learn it in the back just to understudy for the company dancers. And of course, as a person, living alone for the first time in
Yeah.
London,
Yeah.
wow. And very lucky because London is very expensive. But I had this sponsorship from Lausanne. So
Yeah.
basically, I had a card and I would just make rich Raj. And because London is great, but you need money for it. So
Exactly.
I can't complain. I had an amazing year. Yes,
What
tough, hard.
I can imagine. I can imagine. The ballet side. It's a lot of work, a lot of change, and then also the personal side of living alone. When you are our age, being alone isn't so difficult. But when you're 17, 16 years old, it's very weird to be alone for the first time.
Yes, and I think throughout the whole career, you do sacrifice a lot.
Right.
You earn and you gain a lot. I'm not saying that, but you sacrifice a lot in a very early age already. And being alone and traveling and moving somewhere and being, in hotel rooms, crying,
Yeah. Homesick.
homesick. It's not easy,
Yeah,
it is not easy.
Um, After London, you go back to Vienna.
Yes.
In London, you were immersed in Macmillan world and Ashton world. Then you go back to Vienna and you begin to get into a bit more Nureyev, a lot of Sanella's work. Um, how did this affect your dancing? Your understanding of the art of dance, the understanding of choreography, and the understanding of your body. Because there's a big change between Macmillan, Ashton, and Nureyev or Sanella.
I always think, and maybe that's something why I was so privileged and so lucky to have had this career which I had, because somehow having had for 7 years in that case in Vienna school the Vaganova method, and then going for
Right.
this 1 year and getting this British influence, and maybe that made my my dancing special, and now having the Balanchine influence, where, for example, I've now been 8 years here. Whenever I dance in Europe, people are like, oh my God, you changed. And I always understood to take the best out of the styles and to make it mine. So I think that helped me definitely a lot, that I had this understanding and that I was in Vienna not looking like the others, probably just because I had this education in London for 1 year. And the repertoire, at that age, when you're 18, you dance anything. You don't even realize.
Anybody who's 18, 19 years old, they say Paris Opera, they say Royal Ballet, and you don't think about it. You just go to the big opera house, which, as we discussed yesterday, might be the biggest mistake of your life. Because if you are a dancer, what you want to do is to dance. And if you're a young dancer in Royal Ballet or in Paris Opera, it's very likely that you will not dance very much. Having programs with 5, 6, 7 casts. When do you dance?
Yeah. I mean, that's also something, that's what, of course, if you're called a ballet, you might dance every performance. But
Exactly.
the moment you're a soloist, and then principal, and then there's so many casts, it's changing, because you might only get 2, 3 shows, and the other shows you're off.
Exactly.
So that was really great with Vladimir in Berlin, because he was like, go out, dance outside, do guestings. Like, I understand he was never like, no, you have to be here because maybe in case, and covering. And he was like, whatever. He was very open because he had this career. So that was great. So actually that we could still perform outside and not just sitting in Berlin doing nothing. But I definitely agree, and I said it yesterday, is and I'm gonna say it now because I don't know if you're gonna ask me the question at the end of the interview.
I will.
You will, so I will keep it.
Yeah. What happened that a dancer trained in Vienna, then trained in London, then back to Vienna, then to Berlin? How did you get into Balanchine? What was the motivation? Because you were always, you had Balanchine rep. I remember when we were kids and we would go to shows, I would take you because you had Tarantella, you had Stars and Stripes, what takes you into Balanchine and why? Because because you are a prince. I mean, you have the body of a prince. You have the quality of movement, of a prince dancer. But then what happens that you go into Balanchine, which is completely away from being a prince? except for Imperial, maybe, you know.
Yeah, and also what was the most shocking, especially to my mother, my father at that time passed away already, but was like, Rainer, your strength is artistry, like
Right.
telling a story like, you know, Boris Eifmann's Tchaikovsky in Berlin,
Right.
or Maurice Béjart's Ring um den Ring, you know, all those Lansky, you know, it was never about the period in me. So why do you go somewhere where the dancing is the priority and only the dancing, because there's hardly any stories?
Exactly.
And I said, maybe because that's exactly why I liked it. Was I did all those full-length ballets in the 12 years in Berlin and the last couple of years already as a principal. So I was, yeah, I mean, of course, I don't know. I wanted more. I wanted
Yeah.
more. I wanted
Yeah.
maybe different. I wanted to challenge myself. And then through a common friend, she told me that Miami City Ballet, which is the satellite company and daughter company, one can say, like considered the Balanchine Robbins company,
Yeah.
she's looking for a male principal, and she's opened for the classical prince elegance and all of that. She wants that in her high ranks to mix it up a little bit. So I flew here for 2 days and watched the company, and then I got a job offer immediately, and that's how it all started. And I never regretted. Also on the other side, and that's impressive, the Balanchine is very different here than in Europe, like danced, and
Yes.
to have
Yes.
worked with so many repetitors, and it was just an incredible experience.
Yeah. It's very shocking to see Balanchine done right. You know, for example, seeing Serenade performed by New York City Ballet is something that you understand Balanchine. And in Europe, nevertheless, I have always said that Europe is ballet capital of the world and dance capital of the world, with no doubt. You know, Balanchine has to be performed in America. There's no way around it. You know, and after you see a Balanchine piece performed by New York City Ballet or by Miami City Ballet, you cannot see it again in Europe. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just a different, you
Quality
know,
of movement,
quality of movement,
understanding.
and exactly an understanding. I mean, like you say, and that's why Stuttgart is famous for the Krenkos,
Exactly.
and you know, it's a different. You grow up differently, so
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah. Um, Rainer not only became this big star of dance during this last couple of years, he has been working on his book, a book of photographs. Um, and as I understand, it's a more intimate approach to Mr. Rainer Krenstetter, and not only the dancer, but also the human behind the facade. Um, Tell us a bit about this book, which I must tell you guys, it's number one in sales in Amazon, which is just, you know, chapeau. Tell us a bit about this project.
So it was. I worked with Jason Ashwood, who is the photographer in this book, from the UK, from London. I worked with him for another different project in 2016 or 2015, 16. And afterwards, so that was this project with different principal dancers from all over the world. And we shot for 2 days in London. And then he did a book with a former principal of the Royal Ballet, female, and somehow he told me afterwards he always wanted to do something similar with a male dancer. So, and because we had a great time when we worked the first time together, he reached out to me and he said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure." And so basically, he came twice for 2 weeks, and was shooting me from morning to evening. He even stayed here in the apartment in the guest room, and you know, already just preparing breakfast or walking the dog, he would follow me.
Right.
And it was interesting because as dancers we are always looking for, we are perfectionists, right? Like we have to have the perfect hair and the perfect body and the perfect pose and the perfect period, and only this we would post and only this we would put on social media or show to a friend. We never who shows something how you wake up without, you know, your hair and that's something.
And many times, let me interrupt you. Many times, this is the most beautiful part of our day. You know, we always try to hide what we think is ugly, but maybe the most beautiful part is when you wake up. You know, when your hair is all tangled. You know, this is the beauty of the human being. You know.
Exactly. It's just, I don't know, because maybe we're drilled as dancers to reach for perfection in our education, that we have this so brand marked in our, like, you know, it's like it's a thing. So it took me a day where I was like, oh my God, I was like always like, no, don't take that. I look terrible. Like, no, it's not. But then after a day, I let go, and I think he captured in these 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks beautiful pictures. Of course, we were also doing sets, shoots like on the beach or something, but it was incredible. So he captured with his pictures the private Rainer with my friends, with my husband. He asked very important people, school directors, Renato, my director, Lourdes here, like he interviewed, he got quotes, friends. And then, of course, he was also coming to the theater and to the studios and the class and the rehearsal and the backstage and the massage and the physiotherapy. And that was incredible because it wasn't so easy. At that time, we were doing Piano Concerto No. 2, which is very often known in Europe as Ballet Imperial. You know, so you had to ask the Balanchine Trust if that's okay, and then and the Adrian Arch Center, the theater, if you can, you know, take pictures there. So it was a whole big project, and I'm very happy that this book got out. Yeah.
What's the name of the book, Rainer? Where can we find it for if you want to buy it?
It's on worldwide Amazon, so you can go on any Amazon in the world. And it's Not Without Tears, a life lived on stage.
Beautiful title. Beautiful title. I have been lucky to have known you for many years, and I know you as an artist, and I know you as a person, and I know you as a smart, kind, and knowledgeable person. So I think it's important for the young audience that is maybe watching the program, for you to tell them, you know, you're ending your career. What would you tell young dancers that are beginning their career? What is the advice from a star like yourself?
Well, the two professional advices I would give is, as we already mentioned a little bit when I had the Royal Ballet and the Vienna State Opera on my table, that you should not fall for the fame of a company just because, first of all, the Royal Ballet, the Paris, the New York City Ballet, the ABT, they became famous long before your time,
right?
For a certain time, right? Things have changed, dancers have changed, directors have changed, ballet masters have changed, so they're living from that name still. And they are not necessarily actually anymore better, even maybe they're not even that great anymore, and maybe there are other companies much better already. But they didn't have the privilege of having a famous Balanchine or Grenko or Ashton. So you know, it's I would not fall for that. It is important that you find your company where you think you could fit. It's important that you're honest to yourself, what fits to yourself also, you know, what is my body, what is my dancing, am I good in contemporary, you know. It's also, don't just think classical ballet is the only thing. What's nowadays, you have to be such an all-rounder, you have to be good in different styles. but to really find something where you would, and then hope that artistic staff also likes you and pushes for you, and push you, and only then, and even if it's a smaller company, that's what you want. You want to dance and not be in one of the famous company and stay forever, the cover, or you know, the last thing in the back. Like, I don't know. So I think that's the first thing which is really important. I would suggest to the new generation and the young students or young dancers. And the second is that you really, and I'm actually really a proof of it, because I've never, in not one gala, I think I turned more or I jumped higher than anyone else. I was always the least, basically, but I was clean again because of the Royal Ballet. I was very clean. I had very good footwork and port de bras, but still nothing special in my bravura. But how important is to show personality on stage, and how important it is to show artistry on stage.
Right.
And only that makes you individual. Everyone makes a period, and some turn better and some turn not so good, but that's it. It's like a technical score, if you would say it in sport. Yeah. But what about the artistic score, you know? Yeah. And if you try to develop that, and again, if someone doesn't have that, then maybe concentrate on period and try to become a big turner. But if not, you know, what makes you individual, what makes you, because there's only one Paul, there's only one Rainer. And if you manage to transfer that to the audience and make them laugh or cry or goosebumps or whatever, then you have also big success. And
pirouettes and big jumps disappear very quickly. Emotion is maintained and it lasts forever.
Before I forget, what I would also like to say, Stoned, and that's something also like in relation to us, you know, when you get invited, and in my case, when I got, and we worked together and we did tours together, and you asked me several times, don't take those things as just, don't take things as granted. Always be respectful, be thankful. You know, I even would always like write a little card and say, like, you know, thank you for, you know, just not thinking like, okay, I'm here, where's the payment, and when do I get picked up to be dropped back to the airport, you know?
I had never mentioned this before, but you have been the only dancer with whom I've worked that always after a tour, always after a gala, you would come to me with a little gift, with a little present, with a perfume, with a card, and you know, I must say this, that during my whole career, you have been the only dancer to do that, and I always appreciated this.
That I'm sad to hear that, because, but I know, I see it and I hear it, and you know, people take. Yeah, of course, it's you know, you want to dance, you want to travel, you want to dance a different rep, you want to dance with a different partner, you want to dance in a different theater. Of course, as a dancer, you want to earn money, you know. But where is you give? What do you give back? You know, exactly. It's not, and I always felt like it's not about the value of the gift, and like you say, sometimes even if it's the. But that's just education. I mean, it's also when I'm invited to a friend's place, I would always come with a flower or with a bottle of wine. You know, it's basically the same thing. It's just, you know, to say thank you and write a card. Who writes cards nowadays? It's not just afterwards writing a WhatsApp saying like, oh, thank you, Paul. I'm at the airport. It was a great time. Bye, you know. But to actually take the, I don't know, not to say I'm so great, but I wish more people would do it. And
but you always, you know, sometimes you gave me amazing gifts. I remember once you gave me an Issey Miyake perfume, which I lost. I told you this story, you know, they took it away in the airport.
I know.
But it wasn't only this, it was always the little card, the chocolate, you know, and this was also always very appreciated.
I think it's very important, and that's also what I say to, what I would suggest to the younger ones, to to appreciate and to also show appreciations.
Right.
And think about the others. Don't just think about
Exactly.
yourself. Don't be selfish.
That's
basically.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Beautifully said. Rainer, I just want to thank you. One, for this beautiful interview we had.
For the second time.
For the second time. And second, I want to thank you for your career. I think that every dancer would like to hear, every performer would like to hear that you have made the life better for the person who has watched you. And I think that you have made my life better
Thank you.
by being an artist, by seeing you perform. And second, you have made my life better just by being there, by being my friend, by touring with me, by performing with me, and just basically by being Rainer Krenstetter, my friend.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you, of course, also because it was big parts, you know. It was great time. It was beautiful memories. So also very special in my heart, obviously. So thank you as well.
No sé si te importa a ti, yo me siento bien.